Hello everyone. So yeah, welcome back to the new video of Unqork. So hope you all are doing great. So yeah, we'll see new thing today, which is one of the most important service which is there in the plugin component, which is again the Unqork internal service, which is execute module. Okay, we'll see that service because this is something used very often, and without this, Unqork is nothing I can say, right? So which is execute module. So with this service, what power or capability we get is we can use Unqork as a API. So you all know, right, what is API? So basically we create maybe a piece of code, and that we usually keep it on a server. So once anyone calls that, right, once we do a get request to that server, to that particular endpoint, it sends us back the data. Or if you want to post the data, we do that, right? So we had seen that create API, get API, delete update. So all are those APIs, but those are something already given by Unqork, right? So if we want to create our own API, with the help of which we can call that API and we'll get some response back, or if we want to do a certain operation, so that is also we can do with Unqork. So let me show you that. So I have created this new module which is sandbox 2. So what I will do is here, let's deep dive into this execute module. So let me put it the name as plug execute module. So here also I will give the name, and here we'll write the name. We'll select the service as execute module. Okay, and again here we need to specify what module ID we need to call. Okay, so we'll create that module. So whatever that module we will be creating, that would be acting something a API. Okay, and we would be calling that API from this sandbox module. So we have created this sandbox module which would be acting as a client. Okay, and from here we'll call that another module which would be acting as API, and we'll see how it could be done, right? So let me create one new one. Maybe here I will write API. Okay, the name of the API would be send fetch list of people. This is what the use of this API would be. So we'd be calling this API and it would fetch us the list of people. Okay, that is what this API will do. So let me select here. So in the module type, we see when we had created, we had seen front end, we had also seen schema, and let's type use this API module now. Okay, here we'll select the module type as API, and this tags you can just put it as API here. This is not a mandatory, but yeah, good practice to add those tags. So while searching, you'll get that module quickly if you search by keyword as API. So that's the benefit of it. So let it save. So we are not going to build a very complex API. Just like I want to explain you what is execute, right? So what is execute module and how it should be done. So once we select the type as API there, so this is like a template. So this you can remove. There is no issue with that. But Unqork is something provides us a default template which we can use while creating our own API. So what is that? So here we can uh, put some information, right? What is this API about? So maybe here I can write this is the API to fetch the list of people. Okay, this is what the actual use of this API would be. So here in this we need to put this. So this is not a mandatory, but this is like a good practice. This template if you follow, then people who are like who wants to see what is this API about, they can just go through this. What is this API? What is the information about it? So here in this we can specify what is this API about. I mean, what is the request type it accepts. So maybe it is a get, right? We are going to get the list of people and send us back, right? So maybe here you can put the request as get. So this is again for reference or for documentation purpose only, we put all those things, at least this one like panel info and all those things. So it is like better to understand that API what it does. And here we have a panel request. So what is this request parameter? If we want to pass a data, okay, to this module, then here we can mention that hidden element, right? So this would be acting as a request. What API, what request this API accepts, like what payload this API accepts. Okay, so here we can modify this according to our thing. So maybe here I can give the hidden element as uh, request type. Okay, not request type, maybe I can give the name as maybe, okay, let it be request type. And here are all those things, right? So maybe let's keep this panel as, like this only, but other things will configure from our side. So in that way we'll get to know better. So here what is this? We'll pass this data. So from the client module, which is this sandbox module, we will pass a request type, and based on this request type we'll do certain operation here, and then we will set it to response. So this response, whatever the data that we are going to store into this response parameter hidden variable, that is something would be visible on this client side that we are going to pass back to it, right? So how to do that, right? So the first thing is like whenever we execute a module, right? Whenever we, let's suppose, forgot about execute. Once we open a module, okay, if I preview this module, so if I want to execute this plug execute module, right? On a reload of this, on load of this module. So what I will do usually, I will put the initializer component, right? And I will set this on new submission init on load I will use, and this I will set it on new submission as you have already seen this, and here we will put the output, right? So what should happen on a new submission? So that is what usually happens. So when we execute a module, it is happening the same. When we do execute module service, so this module will is getting executed actually, but it is getting executed without actually previewing it. So that is what the other piece of it is. So we don't need to preview this module to execute that. It just like we need to call that module. So once we are calling that module, it is something getting executed, and on a execute or on a load, what we want to do is we will call this init, and then what we'll do is we'll just use a decision component here, decision component. So maybe here I will give the name as rule check request type, and here I will put as manual only. So what this will do is it will check for request type, and we'll put it as exact, and here we'll set operation what to trigger. So let's decide that, we'll decide that what to do, and click on save. Okay, so let me create some dummy data here. Okay, so what we will do is we'll create a data table. Okay, so this we haven't seen, but let me tell you the use case of this. This is pretty simple. So using a data table we can maintain our data. So I can maybe write here as index, here I can write as name each. Okay, here I can write as 1, here I can write is as Virat 36, maybe next one will write as MS Dhoni age 41. Okay, let's keep these two data, that's it. Okay, so just look at this, whatever the steps I am following, we'll get to know what I'm doing eventually once you go through this. So let me put the name, good name here, maybe DT is something like prefix we use usually to denote that it is a data table, and here I can write list maybe people data. Okay, so this is the name. paste, save and close. Okay, so this is what we are doing. So now what we are going to do is, if request type is, okay, let me open this. Yeah, so if request type is, you want to set here, right? If request type is get people, okay, then what we are going to do, we are going to take the data that we have stored into that data table, and then we are going to, so this data where whatever we have stored, that we are going to map to this response parameter. Okay, that is what our goal is. Okay, if request type is blank, okay, let's suppose if request type, if from the client the request type is not set, okay, here this parameter is not set, then what we are going to do, we are going to send us a customized message, right? Please pass the request type, something like that. Okay, that is what we are going to do. So I'm going to introduce a new component here, which is a calculator component. This is very simple component, so I don't want to create a separate video for it, so I just wanted to explain you here itself. So maybe here I will write calc map data. So basically calculator is something, it is used to calculate, as simple as that. And other operation we can do is like we can map the data. So whatever the operations you want to do, let's suppose you have two numbers, you want to add up those numbers, here you can write the formula, right? That's it. And apart from that, some advanced stuff, not advanced but one step ahead of using just a calculation piece, we can like map the data as well. So here what we are going to do, we are going to mention this dt people data. So this is the input and this is alias. So by what name we want to call this dt people data, that we can mention here. This is something optional, but yeah, good to just mention any alias. Maybe I can write people list. Okay, this is something very optional, don't no need to add. So what I'm going to do as output of this is the input. Okay, so when we write this thing, the first row, this calculator will get the hold of dt people data, that data table. Okay, and that we want to map it to that response parameter variable, right? So here I can put it as response parameter. So how to do that, right? Here we can put in the, we can put it as is equal to, and this alias we can mention. So if I'm not specifying this alias, I can write this dt people data also here directly in this formula. But yeah, if you want, you can do it. So basically I have created this alias. So here we have done some operation, right? Which is something calculation we have done. So what calculation is? Response parameter is equal to people list. So whatever the data which is there in the people list, that would be mapped to the response parameter. That's it. Okay, this is what we are going to do. Then let's save this. Okay, so now what we will do, if this is request type is get people, then as a output what we want to do is, you want to trigger this calc map data trigger and go. Okay, this is what we are going to do, and this calc map data is further going to map that values. That's it, right? So other scenario was if this request type is blank, okay, nothing is passed, then what we need to do is, in the output I will write response parameter. Here I will write value, set the value to please mention request parameter. Okay, this is what I'm going to pass directly. So this is how we are doing. We can create n number of rows here which are for different conditions. Not request parameter here, request type, sorry. Okay, so we are cool here, we are good here. Okay, so now what we are going to do, our API is ready, right? We have the request type, we have done this as okay, we have just created an init. Let's trigger something, right? So what we need to trigger is that rule we want to trigger, which is request rule check request type. So here I will write trigger and this is go. Cool. So yeah, our API is ready. So what we'll do in the next video, we'll try to call this API from this module, right? and we will grab that response, okay, on this module. So yeah, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and also share this video if you find these are useful. Okay, thank you guys. See you in the next video.